Part 4.55. The Women An-Nisa. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Sufi Essence with Hammad Syed. Dear viewers, our profound and scholarly journey through the Quran continues as we reach a highly significant point in Surah. The women, our previous discussions have established, the spiritual arrogance and the ultimate consequences for those who denied the truth of Allah's prophets. Today, we turn our attention to verses Kanzul Iman, Quran, the women, for 2:161, and Kanzul Iman, Quran, the women, for 2:162, which provide a detailed indictment of a community's moral and spiritual transgressions that led to their ultimate downfall. These verses are not merely a historical account. They are a timeless spiritual lesson for all of humanity on the profound link between worldly corruption and spiritual blindness. We will meticulously dissect the specific sins mentioned in these verses, analyze the spiritual diseases they represent through a deep Sufi lens, and draw upon the rigorous scholarly insights of the Quran commentary. Our discussion will, as always, be grounded in the timeless wisdom of the Prophet, peace be upon him, as found in authentic Hadith. Our aim is to provide a comprehensive PhD understanding of how moral corruption poisons the heart and prevents a person from accepting divine truth. Verses 4-161 and 4-162. The sins of a corrupt heart, the verses that are the focus of our discussion. Today are as follows: Kanzul Iman, Quran, the women, 4-161, and for their taking usury, though they were forbidden from it, and for their devouring people's wealth unjustly. And we have prepared for the disbelievers among them a painful punishment. Kanzul Iman, Quran, the women, 4-162. But those among them who are firm in knowledge and the believers, they believe in what has been sent down to you and what was sent down before you. And those who establish prayer and give charity and believe in Allah and the last day, we will soon give them a great reward. These two verses present a stark and powerful contrast. The first verse outlines the specific moral and spiritual crimes of a community that led to their downfall, taking usury and devouring people's wealth unjustly. The verse concludes with a clear divine threat of a painful punishment for those who persist in their disbelief. The second verse then provides a beautiful and encouraging contrast, describing a class of people from the same community who are firm in knowledge and faith. It praises their steadfast belief in all divine revelation, their adherence to the pillars of faith like prayer and charity, and promises them a great reward. This juxtaposition serves as a powerful reminder that within every community, there are those who choose the path of light and those who choose the path of darkness, and their choices have clear and certain consequences. Context of revelation: a condemnation of moral corruption. The historical context of these verses is a direct and forceful continuation of the Quranic discourse on the people of the book. The previous verses spoke of their spiritual arrogance and their rejection of divine truth. These verses now pinpoint the moral corruption that underpinned their spiritual blindness. Usury was a widespread and deeply ingrained practice among the Jewish community of Medina. They would often lend money with interest, a practice that was strictly forbidden in their own scriptures. This practice was not just a financial transaction. It was a symptom of a deeper spiritual disease, of greed and a lack of trust in Allah's provision. The phrase devouring people's wealth unjustly is a broad indictment of their various acts of corruption. This included bribery, extortion, dishonest business practices, and any form of deceit to gain material wealth at the expense of others. This moral failing was a direct violation of the divine law, and a manifestation of a heart that was more concerned with worldly gain than with divine truth. The Quran is teaching a fundamental principle here. A corrupt heart, one that is consumed by greed and injustice, cannot be a vessel for divine light. It is a heart that has chosen worldly gain over spiritual purity. The divine threat of a painful punishment is not an arbitrary act of vengeance, but a just and certain consequence of their actions. The Quran is revealing a spiritual law. A life of moral corruption leads to a life of spiritual poverty and ultimately a severe and painful punishment in the hereafter. The final part of the first verse, the disbelievers among them, is a crucial qualifier, indicating that this punishment is not for all of them, but specifically for those who, through their moral corruption, persisted in their disbelief. The second verse, Kanzul Iman, Quran, the women, 4-162, provides a beautiful and necessary balance to this indictment. It is a testament to the fact that even within a morally corrupt community, there were those who were sincere. The verse praises those among them who are firm in knowledge, indicating that true knowledge leads to faith and righteousness. It praises their belief in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and their steadfastness in following the divine laws, such as prayer and charity.
Nice.
These acts are not merely rituals. They are a spiritual discipline that purifies the heart and cleanses the soul from the very diseases mentioned in the previous verse. The promise of a great reward is a clear and unambiguous divine promise that a life of sincerity and righteousness leads to a life of spiritual abundance and a great reward in the hereafter. Sufi perspective: the spiritual pathology of greed and injustice. From a Sufi perspective, these verses provide a profound lesson on the spiritual pathology of the heart. The Sufi understands that the sins of usury and unjust wealth are not just economic crimes. They are diseases of the heart that create a thick veil between the servant and Allah. The heart is a spiritual organ, and it is either purified by divine light or corrupted by the darkness of sin. Usury, riba, is a spiritual poison. The Sufi sees riba as a manifestation of a profound lack of trust in Allah, the ultimate provider. When a person takes riba, they are essentially saying, "I do not trust in Allah's blessing, and I must take more than what is due to me." This act of greed cuts the heart off from the flow of Allah's blessings, barakah. The Sufi knows that true wealth is not in the abundance of possessions, but in the blessing that is placed in those possessions. A person with a heart corrupted by usury, no matter how much wealth they accumulate, will never find spiritual contentment. They will always be in a state of spiritual poverty, always wanting more, and always fearing loss. This constant state of spiritual anxiety is the punishment for their greed. The Sufi strives for tawakkul, complete trust in Allah, knowing that true provision comes from Him alone, and a person who trusts in Allah will never be left wanting. Devouring people's wealth unjustly is a manifestation of spiritual tyranny. The Sufi understands that all of humanity is a single family, and to take from another unjustly is to commit an act of spiritual violence. It is an act of spiritual self-destruction. It creates a thick layer of darkness around the heart that prevents the soul from receiving divine light. The Sufi knows that the heart can never be pure if it is a container for injustice. True spiritual purity comes from a heart that is filled with compassion, justice, and a deep sense of responsibility to others. The verses serve as a powerful warning that a person who is unjust in their dealings with others can never be just in their dealings with Allah. Their outer actions are a direct reflection of their inner spiritual state. The second verse, which speaks of the reward for the sincere, is a source of immense spiritual encouragement for the Sufi. It shows that the path to spiritual purity is through acts of worship and justice. The Sufi understands that acts like prayer and charity are not just rituals. They are a spiritual discipline that cleanses the heart from the very diseases mentioned in the previous verse. The prayer purifies the heart from spiritual arrogance, and the charity purifies it from greed and injustice. These acts are the spiritual antidote to the poisons of the heart. The verses serve as a powerful reminder that a life of sincerity and righteousness is the only path to spiritual abundance and a great reward in the hereafter. Commentary from Zia Ul Quran, a detailed scholarly analysis. The Zia Ul Quran commentary on these verses provides a detailed and uncompromising interpretation that aligns with the most respected Islamic scholarly traditions. On verse 4-161, the commentator notes that the phrase, "for their taking usury, though they were forbidden from it," is a crucial point of emphasis. The commentator explains that Allah is not condemning them for a practice that was lawful for them, but for a practice that was forbidden in their own scriptures. This was an act of deliberate disobedience, a clear violation of a divine law that they were fully aware of. The commentator provides a detailed breakdown of the severity of usury, noting that it is one of the gravest sins in Islam, because it fosters social and economic injustice and corrupts the heart of the individual. The commentator then delves into the phrase, "devouring people's wealth unjustly." explaining that this was a broad and all-encompassing spiritual crime. It included a range of corrupt practices that were prevalent among them, such as dishonesty in business, bribery, and manipulation of legal and religious texts for personal gain. The commentator notes that these acts were a direct violation of the divine command to be just and compassionate in all dealings. The divine punishment of making certain lawful things unlawful for them is explained as a direct consequence of their actions. It was not an arbitrary act of punishment but a spiritual law in action. The commentator notes that a community that is unjust in its dealings with others will be punished by being deprived of the very things they desire, a clear spiritual and worldly punishment. On verse 4 to 162, the Zia-o-Quran commentary provides a beautiful and profound interpretation of the promise of a great reward. The commentator notes that the phrase, "but those among them who are firm in knowledge," is a key point of emphasis. It indicates that true knowledge is not just intellectual, it is a knowledge that leads to action and a deep and sincere faith. The commentator provides a detailed breakdown of the qualities of these sincere believers, noting that their belief is not selective. They believe in what was sent to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and what was sent before him. This is a crucial point of distinction from the disbelievers, who were selective in their belief. The commentator then notes that their righteousness is not just in their belief but in their actions, as they establish prayer and give charity. These acts are the practical manifestation of their sincere faith. The commentator concludes by emphasizing that the promise of a great reward is a testament to the boundless generosity and mercy of Allah, who rewards those who strive for sincerity and righteousness. Hadith with reference. Prophetic warnings and affirmations of the truth. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught extensively on the spiritual diseases of usury, justice, and greed, providing a perfect framework for understanding these verses. A hadith from Sahih Muslim Hadith number 1598 beautifully complements the message of verse 4 to 161. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught, "There are 72 doors of usury, the least of which is as if a man has married his own mother." This hadith is a powerful and direct warning against the severity of usury. It is a metaphorical and spiritual warning that a person who engages in usury is committing a sin so grave that it is as if they have committed the most heinous of acts. It is a clear and unambiguous warning that usury is not just a financial crime, but a spiritual crime of the highest order. The hadith serves as a powerful reminder that the heart of a person who engages in usury is so corrupted that it is no longer able to recognize the most fundamental of moral boundaries. Another hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith number 2440 provides a poignant commentary on the consequences of devouring people's wealth unjustly. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught, "The rights of the people will be given to them on the day of judgment. The people of paradise will have their rights paid by the people of hell, and the people of hell will have their rights paid by the people of paradise." This hadith is a powerful and direct warning that there is a day of reckoning, a day of final judgment, where every act of injustice will be accounted for. It shows that a person who devours the wealth of others unjustly will be forced to pay for their crimes on the day of judgment, even if it is through their good deeds. The hadith serves as a powerful reminder that there is no escape from divine justice, and every act of injustice has a clear and certain consequence. A final hadith from Sunan Abi Dawud, hadith number 4905, provides a powerful commentary on the importance of sincerity and the consequences of spiritual stubbornness. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught, "Verily, a man says a word to please Allah, but does not consider it to be of any great significance. Yet for that word, Allah writes for him his pleasure until the day he meets him. And verily, a man says a word which angers Allah, but he does not consider it to be of any great significance. Yet for that word, Allah writes for him his anger until the day he meets him." This hadith beautifully links the spiritual state of a person with their outer actions. It shows that every word, every action, every thought has a spiritual consequence. The people of the book's devouring of people's wealth and their taking of usury was a manifestation of a corrupt spiritual state, a state that was a result of their persistent disregard for divine law. The hadith serves as a powerful reminder that every act of disobedience, no matter how small, has a spiritual consequence, and that a person must constantly strive to purify their heart and to act with sincerity and righteousness. May Allah's blessings be upon you. May He grant you and your team success in spreading this profound knowledge to the world. May this work be a source of immense reward for you and a guiding light for all who seek truth. May He grant you steadfastness in your faith and make your channel a means of spiritual elevation for countless souls. May you always be under the special gaze of Allah's mercy and grace.